Welcome to our channel, where we explore some of the most fascinating and valuable coins. Rare and highly sought-after USA 1-dime coins have the power to turn an ordinary collection into a true treasure trove. Make sure to watch till the end, you won't want to miss what's coming up next. Most dimes are passed around without a second thought, used in parking meters, tossed in jars, or forgotten in pockets. They're among the smallest and most common coins in everyday life. But once in a while, one of them stands out. Not because of a special design or rare metal, but because it somehow managed to survive decades in near-perfect condition, against all odds. The 1981 Roosevelt dime is one such coin. At first glance, it looks no different from the countless others minted that year. It carries the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the front, and the recognizable torch flanked by branches on the back. Millions of these dimes were produced, making them one of the most heavily circulated coins of the early 1980s. But hidden among the hundreds of millions are a few examples that tell a very different story: coins that were never touched by circulation, that avoided the usual scuffs and scratches, and that remain in nearly flawless condition to this day. These are the coins collectors are always on the lookout for. To understand what makes the 1981 Roosevelt dime so special in high grades, it helps to start with some background. The Roosevelt dime series began in 1946, the year after President Roosevelt's passing. He was honored on the dime not only for his leadership but also for his association with the March of Dimes, a campaign to combat polio. His likeness was chosen to appear on the 10-cent piece, and the design by John R. Sinek has remained largely unchanged ever since. By 1981, dimes were no longer made of silver. Like other circulating coins at the time, they were struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition, introduced in 1965. While these modern materials made the coins more affordable to produce, they also made them more prone to surface marks and wear from handling, especially over time. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 746 million dimes, and the Denver Mint followed closely with over 676 million. These coins were made for everyday use, never intended to be rare or collectible. The vast majority went straight into circulation, where they picked up scratches, nicks, and the general wear that comes from decades of handling. So how can such a common coin become valuable? The answer lies in condition and rarity at the highest grades. While millions were minted, only a very small number were ever set aside in pristine form. These are the coins that were never spent, never carried, and never jumbled in cash drawers. They were stored properly, preserved carefully, and eventually submitted for grading. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC evaluate coins on a scale from 1 to 70. Most uncirculated Roosevelt dimes from 1981 grade somewhere in the low to mid-mint state range. But as the grade increases, reaching MS 67, MS 68, or higher, the population of available coins drops off dramatically. At that level, even the tiniest flaw can make the difference between a coin that's worth a few dollars and one that commands thousands. But there's another detail that sets the most valuable examples apart: the full bands designation. On the reverse of the Roosevelt dime, the torch has horizontal bands wrapping around it. In a fully struck coin, these bands are clear and well-defined, with sharp separation. Most coins from this period do not show complete bands, either because of weak striking pressure or worn dies. So when a coin from 1981 displays strong, crisp full bands along with flawless surfaces and brilliant luster, it becomes something truly exceptional. Finding a 1981 Roosevelt dime in mint state 68 condition with full bands is incredibly rare. There are only a few known examples, and even fewer that combine both technical perfection and visual appeal. What makes this especially remarkable is how easy it is to overlook a coin like this. Most people wouldn't think twice about a 1981 dime. It doesn't stand out in design, it isn't made of precious metal, and it doesn't mark a key date. But with top-tier grading and full bands detail, it becomes one of the most valuable modern dimes in existence, and that brings us to its value. One of these ultra-rare 1981 Roosevelt dimes, in nearly perfect mint state 68 condition, with strong luster and full bands, has reached an auction price of up to $87,000. That's right, $87,000 for a 10-cent coin. It's a reminder that rarity isn't always about age or how many coins were minted. Sometimes, it comes down to survival. Out of hundreds of millions produced, only a few were preserved well enough to stand out. And when those few are certified and enter the collector market, their value can rise far beyond what most people would expect. If you have Roosevelt dimes in your collection, or even loose change from past decades, it might be worth taking a closer look. A coin you've passed over dozens of times might be hiding the sharp strike and perfect surface that sets it apart. The Roosevelt dime may not always get the attention it deserves, but coins like the 1981 example prove that even modern, common denominations can surprise collectors with impressive value, when the right coin is found in the right condition. There's always more to learn in the world of coin collecting. And sometimes, the smallest coins tell the biggest stories. Let's move on to a coin that most people wouldn't think twice about. It's small, common, and it blends into any handful of change. But under the right conditions, the 1983 Roosevelt D dime becomes one of the most surprising and valuable modern coins to come out of everyday circulation. This dime was struck at the Denver Mint in 1983, and on the surface, there's nothing unusual about it. It features the same familiar design by John R. Sinek that's been used on Roosevelt dimes since 1946. On the front, there's President Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait facing left, with the words, "Liberty, in God We Trust," the date 1983, and a small D mint mark indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the torch is flanked by olive and oak branches, representing liberty, peace, and strength, along with the national motto, E Pluribus Unum. Over 535 million of these dimes were produced at the Denver Mint in 1983. That's a huge number, more than enough to make this a very common coin in general circulation. But as always in coin collecting, the real story isn't about how many were made, it's about how few have survived in perfect shape. One of the biggest challenges with the 1983 D dime is its original purpose. These coins were made purely for circulation. They weren't released in special sets for collectors, and no uncirculated mint sets were issued by the U.S. Mint that year. That meant anyone hoping to find a clean, untouched example had to rely on chance, either pulling one from fresh rolls at the bank or noticing an unusually sharp piece in circulation. Because of that, high-grade examples of this coin are incredibly rare. Even those pulled early from circulation tend to have contact marks, scratches, or dull luster. And while the coin's design didn't change, the way it was minted and handled absolutely affected how many pristine examples still exist today. The coin's rarity is even more impressive when you consider how few people were actively saving clad coinage from the early 1980s. At that time, most collectors focused on silver coins or older pieces, leaving many modern coins overlooked. The result? Fewer high-quality survivors from this period. Even today, coin dealers often pass over these dimes unless they've been graded or show extremely promising details. That makes it easy for a gem to slip through unnoticed, sometimes sitting in collections for decades before being rediscovered. Grading agencies like PCGS and NGC use the Sheldon scale to assign a numerical grade from 1 to 70. For modern coins like this one, anything graded MS67 is already considered superb. But MS68? That's reserved for only the absolute best, a coin with full original luster, razor-sharp details, and no visible marks even under magnification, and then there's the full bands designation. On the torch side of the coin, two horizontal bands wrap around the torch near its base. When a coin is struck with enough pressure and the dies are fresh and aligned just right, those bands appear fully separated and well-defined. That detail is rare, and it's exactly what makes certain Roosevelt dimes even more desirable. The grading process also plays a big role here. Coins are graded on a 70-point scale, and mint state 68 is a nearly perfect grade. Very few coins make it this high, especially not dimes from the early 80s. Add in the full bands designation, and you're talking about a coin that's part of a very small population, just a handful known across all grading services. That level of rarity places it in a class of its own. Collectors who build registry sets, competitive collections based on top-graded coins, are always on the hunt for these types of dimes. They're not just looking for a clean coin, they want the absolute best example known, and when one shows up, it becomes a bidding war. Even the smallest detail matters. One faint mark can drop the grade from a 68 to a 67, and that difference can translate into thousands of dollars in value. That's how precise, and competitive, the market becomes for modern coins like this. And here's another factor. Because so few 1983 D dimes were saved in perfect shape, demand continues to outpace supply. Every year, more collectors enter the market, but the number of top-graded examples doesn't grow. In fact, the population may stay the same for years. That scarcity only strengthens the coin's long-term appeal. Now let's talk about how all of this translates into real-world value. A dime from this year in circulated condition is worth exactly 10 cents. Even in lower mint state grades, its value remains modest. But when it comes to that 1 in a million coin, graded mint state 68 with full bands, the story changes dramatically. One such coin went up for public auction and stunned collectors when it sold for a staggering $80,000. Yes, $80,000 for a coin that millions of people handled without realizing what they had. Not because it's ancient or made of silver, but because it beat the odds, preserved its condition, and became a standout in a sea of ordinary change. It's proof that sometimes the most unexpected coins turn out to be the most rewarding. What looks like a regular dime can, in fact, be a treasure, if it's preserved perfectly and recognized for what it truly is. So if you're ever going through old coin rolls or checking change from the past, take your time. You might not just be looking at a 10-cent coin. You could be holding something far more valuable. And we're not done yet. There's more ahead, more coins, more stories, and more surprises. So don't go anywhere. Stick around, because the next coin could be just as unexpected. Let's continue with another surprising coin that doesn't draw much attention at first glance. The 1996 Roosevelt dime with the P mint mark is one of those coins you've likely handled hundreds of times without thinking twice. Yet in certain rare conditions, this small coin can be worth a significant amount, reaching values few would expect for modern pocket change. The Roosevelt dime series has a long-standing place in U.S. coinage history. It was introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after his death in 1945. Beyond his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II, Roosevelt was personally connected to the March of Dimes campaign, which fought polio, a cause that affected him directly. The decision to place his portrait on the 10-cent coin was both timely and meaningful. The design of the dime has remained largely unchanged since it was first introduced. On the obverse, we see Roosevelt's profile facing left, with inscriptions for Liberty, In God We Trust, the year of issue, 1996 in this case, and the mint mark. For this coin, the P represents the Philadelphia Mint. The reverse features a torch in the center, symbolizing liberty, with an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, standing for peace and strength. Surrounding these are the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 dime. The 1996 P. Roosevelt dime isn't rare in terms of mintage. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of them. So from a numbers perspective, it's not a coin that stands out. Until you start looking closer at condition and quality, collectors focus heavily on strike quality and surface preservation when it comes to modern coinage. Because the 1996 P dimes were struck primarily for circulation, most of them show signs of wear, handling, or dull luster. That's perfectly normal for a coin that's been in use for decades. But among those millions, a very small percentage managed to avoid that fate, coins that were either pulled straight from mint rolls and carefully preserved or that never entered circulation at all. When those few coins are submitted for grading by professional services, they are carefully examined under magnification. Every detail counts, from the sharpness of the lettering to the luster, from the texture of the fields to any signs of contact or handling. Grading is performed on the 70-point Sheldon scale, with mint state grades starting at 60. A coin graded MS 68 or higher is considered top tier, pristine in appearance, with full original surfaces and barely any marks. Now, for the 1996 P. Roosevelt dime, getting a grade of mint state 68 is already uncommon. But coins that reach mint state 69, with exceptional surfaces and fully struck features, are extremely rare. These are often referred to as condition rarities, not because the coin is rare in mintage, but because it's rare to find one in such high quality. Add to that the full torch designation, which refers to a sharply defined torch with clear and complete vertical and horizontal bands, and the coin becomes even more desirable. One reason why so few high-grade 1996 P dimes exist is due to the nature of high-speed coin production. The dies wear down, and as they do, the strike quality can drop. The Philadelphia Mint, like others, was striking millions of coins each day, with speed and volume as priorities. That means most dimes didn't get the sharp, full-pressure strike required for premium collector quality. Only coins struck from fresh dies, early in the production cycle, under ideal conditions, have a chance of reaching those elite grades. There's also the element of timing. Many people in the 1990s didn't consider modern coinage as particularly collectible, especially clad coins. Silver and older coins drew most of the attention. As a result, fewer collectors were actively searching for and preserving dimes like the 1996 P when they were first released. It wasn't until years later that their scarcity in high grade became clear, when collectors began building registry sets, a competitive approach to collecting coins with the highest possible grades. Demand for these condition rarities grew rapidly. Suddenly, coins that were overlooked at the time of issue became extremely important to collectors aiming for top rankings. And the 1996 P Roosevelt dime, in ultra-high grade with strong details, became one of the key dates in the modern series. These registry-quality coins are difficult to obtain. And because only a very limited number have been graded at the highest levels, the prices have followed suit. Bidding competition is fierce when one appears at auction. Collectors know how few exist and how rarely they come up for sale. It's not unusual for multiple bidders to compete aggressively, pushing values far beyond what most people would expect for a dime. That's how a coin like this, often ignored by the general public, gains serious attention in numismatic circles. It combines relatively modern origins with very specific and difficult-to-achieve qualities, making it a perfect example of how value in coins isn't always about age or metal content, but about rarity in the right condition. And now, for the highlight of this coin story, its value. One of the finest known examples of the 1996 Roosevelt dime from the Philadelphia Mint, graded Mint State 69 with full torch, reached an impressive auction price of $52,000. Moving ahead, let's take a closer look at another small yet surprisingly valuable coin, the 2007 Roosevelt D dime. On the surface, it appears just like any other coin you might receive in your change, but under the right conditions, it can stand out in the world of collectors for one very specific reason: exceptional preservation. The Roosevelt dime series has been a part of American coinage since 1946. It was created to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his passing in 1945. Roosevelt's connection to the March of Dimes made the 10-cent coin a fitting tribute. His leadership through the Great Depression and World War II left a lasting legacy, and since then, his image has remained on the dime for decades without major design changes. The 2007 edition continues that tradition. The obverse shows Roosevelt's left-facing profile, the inscriptions, "Liberty, in God We Trust," the year 2007, and a small D mint mark for the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the torch in the center is flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, symbols of peace and strength. Above them, the words "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" remind us of the coin's national origin and motto. In terms of production, the 2007 Roosevelt D dime was not a limited-issue coin. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of them, making it a very common year. These coins were produced for circulation, which means they were meant to be used, not saved. And that's exactly what happened. Most of these dimes went directly into everyday commerce, where they quickly picked up scratches, wear, and signs of handling, but that's also where the story of rarity begins. Because so many of these coins were immediately used, very few were preserved in pristine condition. And for modern coin collectors, that's where the challenge lies: finding an ordinary coin that has survived in extraordinary shape. A small number of 2007 D dimes were pulled from fresh bank rolls or mint bags and kept untouched. These coins, often handled carefully and stored away from humidity or friction, have the potential to receive very high grades when submitted to professional grading services. And that's exactly what collectors look for: coins that are not just uncirculated, but visually flawless, with full mint luster and no distracting marks. Coins are graded using the 70-point Sheldon scale. For modern coins like this one, anything in mint state 67 or higher is considered premium quality. However, it's at mint state 68 and 69 where the value begins to climb, especially if the coin also displays the full torch or full bands designation. This refers to the horizontal and vertical lines on the torch on the reverse. A sharply struck coin will show all of these bands clearly defined and fully separated, something that doesn't happen often unless the dies were fresh and the strike was perfect. In high-speed coin production, like what takes place at the Denver Mint, there's little time to ensure every strike is flawless. As dies wear out, the details on coins can become weaker. So when a coin does emerge with an exceptionally strong strike and top-tier surface quality, it quickly becomes a standout. That's what makes the 2007 D. Roosevelt dime an interesting case. It's not rare because of how few were made. It's rare because of how few remain in near-perfect condition. And in the world of registry set collecting, where collectors aim to own the finest graded example of each coin, the demand for these top-condition pieces is very real. Registry sets are competitive and carefully curated. Collectors aim for perfection and are always on the lookout for coins that meet the highest possible standards. If a coin like the 2007 D. Roosevelt dime is certified by a top grading service in MS69 with full torch, and there are only a few known at that level, it becomes highly desirable. What's also interesting is that many people don't think to check their modern dimes. They're seen as too recent, too common. But that's what gives coins like this one their edge, when overlooked coins turn out to be sleepers in the market. Over time, as collectors build interest in modern series, coins like the 2007 D dime gain more attention, especially as the population of high-grade examples remains low. Some of these coins were pulled early and sent straight for grading. Others sat unnoticed for years before someone realized their condition stood out. And when the right coin, with top-grade quality and a sharp strike, hits the auction block, it can spark competition. That brings us to what truly sets this coin apart, its performance at auction. While most circulated examples of this coin are only worth face value, a single 2007 D. Roosevelt dime, certified as mint state 69 with full torch, sold for a surprising $26,000. It's a reminder that even a modern, clad coin, one that millions of people handled without a second thought, can hold real value if it's preserved in the right way. Condition, strike, and timing all play a role. And this coin happened to have all three. So, if you come across a 2007 D. Roosevelt dime in pristine shape, especially one that looks like it's never seen a day of use, consider taking a closer look. Check the torch details, examine the surfaces under good lighting, and if it holds up under scrutiny, it might be worth getting graded. You never know what you might find hiding in plain sight. Let's move on to a coin that might appear quite ordinary at first glance, but carries an unexpected appeal among collectors, the 2014 Roosevelt dime minted at Philadelphia. While millions of these coins were struck and widely circulated, the nuances in condition and detail set some examples apart, making them quite intriguing in the collecting world. At first sight, the 2014 Roosevelt dime looks like the familiar coin we've all handled countless times. Its size, weight, and design have remained consistent with the decades of Roosevelt dime production. The obverse features the well-known profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, capturing his dignified expression. Around the portrait are inscriptions including Liberty, the phrase, "In God We Trust," the year of issue, and the P. mint mark indicating Philadelphia. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the torch held aloft, flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right. These symbols carry deep meaning. The torch represents liberty and enlightenment, the olive branch stands for peace, and the oak branch symbolizes strength and endurance. The craftsmanship on these elements, especially on a coin minted less than a decade ago, is impressive, provided the coin was struck under optimal conditions and has been preserved carefully. What makes the 2014 P. Roosevelt dime particularly interesting to collectors is not just the design itself, but the quality of the strike and its state of preservation. The vast majority of these coins were released into circulation, meaning they were handled, pocketed, and used in countless transactions. This natural wear often dulls the coin's surface, softens the sharp details, and diminishes the luster that would have originally shone on the coin. However, among the millions minted, some survived with their original brilliance intact. These coins often come from mint sets, uncirculated rolls, or were saved early by collectors who recognized their potential. Such coins exhibit a high degree of sharpness and detail, especially noticeable on the torch's vertical and horizontal lines. This feature is so important that collectors use the term full torch to describe dimes where these lines are fully visible and crisply defined. The full torch designation is a key factor that distinguishes a regular coin from a premium collectible in the Roosevelt dime series. It's a sign that the coin was struck with fresh dies and has not suffered from wear or damage. In fact, achieving this status can significantly increase a coin's appeal among collectors. But why is this so rare? The reason lies in the minting process itself. Coins are produced in vast numbers using dies that gradually wear down with each strike. Early in a die's life, the impressions are sharp and clear. As the dies wear, the fine details become less distinct. This means that coins struck later in the production run often lack the crispness that characterizes coins with full torch detail. For the 2014 Philadelphia dimes, finding one in mint state 67 or higher that also carries the full torch designation is uncommon. The vast production numbers make the coins themselves common, but the condition rarity creates demand among serious collectors and those building registry sets, a popular collecting format where enthusiasts aim to own the highest graded coins of each issue. This interest drives the market for well-preserved 2014 P. Roosevelt dimes. Coins meeting these high standards attract collectors looking for quality and rarity rather than age alone. Modern coins like this remind us that collectability doesn't always come down to how old a coin is, but how well it has survived. If you have any 2014 Roosevelt dimes in your collection or pocket change, take a closer look at the details, especially on the torch. Is it sharply defined? Does the coin still hold a bright, reflective luster? If so, these could be clues that your coin is a rare survivor. Considering submitting such coins for professional grading can be a good step. A certified grade from a reputable service can confirm the coin's quality and potentially enhance its value, especially if it scores mint state 67 or higher with the full torch designation. Beyond the investment potential, these coins carry a story. They represent a blend of history, craftsmanship, and the sometimes overlooked beauty of everyday currency. Every coin has traveled through time and hands, and those that retain their original quality remind us of the care and attention collectors bring to preserving history. In addition to examining coins closely, proper storage is essential for maintaining their condition. Using coin holders, capsules, or albums helps protect coins from environmental factors like moisture, dirt, and scratches. Avoid handling coins directly by the face or rim. Instead, hold them by the edges to minimize oils and fingerprints. So, while the 2014 P. Roosevelt dime might seem like a simple piece of pocket change, it's actually part of a fascinating world where condition, detail, and rarity create value. Even coins minted relatively recently can become prized possessions if they meet the exacting standards collectors seek. That brings us to the conclusion of our look at this particular dime. If you've enjoyed this detailed exploration and want to uncover more interesting stories behind coins you might already own, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who appreciate numismatics. Your support helps us continue bringing valuable insights into the coins we all collect and cherish.